skills need to be practiced. And we start off with skills, we're unconsciously incompetent, then we become consciously incompetent, then we're consciously competent. And if all goes well, we get to the second nature of it where it becomes unconsciously competent. It's simply a skill of learning to come home.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, best-selling author of Value Whispering and creator of the Value Whispering methodology, the smarter way to market your small business. Each week on this show, I bring you thought-provoking conversations and practical ideas to help you discover the smarter way to market your small business, so you can stop wasting years on advice that was never right for you, communicate your true value with confidence, and become the expert that your dream clients naturally trust, remember, and choose. Today, we're exploring something that sits really at the heart of all of that, because no matter how experienced you are or how qualified, there are always moments when we doubt ourselves. We wonder whether we should or can speak up. We compare ourselves to the louder voices in the room, or we try and lead in a way that just doesn't quite feel natural, simply because we think that is what success is supposed to look like. My guest today believes there is a different way, and I tend to agree. Ruth Andermatt shares how she went from being the only female director leading a team of 70 men in corporate Canada to helping women in leadership to reconnect with their own power, trust their intuition, and lead with authenticity rather than performance. Together, we explore why so many women feel they have to become someone else to succeed, why true leadership starts with self-leadership, and how learning to come home to yourself can transform not only the way you lead, but the way you live. It's a thoughtful conversation about confidence, visibility, midlife, intuition, boundaries, and, so importantly, giving yourself permission to lead in a way that feels genuinely like you. So if you have ever wondered if you're enough just as you are, or whether success requires you to become louder, tougher, pushier, or someone you're just not, I think you're going to find this conversation both reassuring and empowering. But before we dive in, I'd love to invite you to something special, because this month I'm celebrating my 18th year in business, and tomorrow I'm hosting a live birthday celebration where I'll be sharing the 18 biggest lessons I've learned over nearly 2 decades of building a business. We'll explore the multiple mistakes that I've made and I've seen others make that can quietly steal years of progress. I'll share what I've discovered about what really creates sustainable success and the mindset shifts that have made the biggest difference along the way. There'll also be plenty of time for your questions during the live Q&A, and because no birthday celebration would be complete without presents, I'll also be giving away gifts and prizes, so you need to be there live to be in with a chance of winning. You'll find all the details at melittacampbell.com/birthday, and the link is also in the show notes, so I do hope you'll come and join us for that celebration tomorrow. But now let's get into today's conversation with Ruth. So hi Ruth, welcome to the show.
Hi Melitta, I'm pleased to be here.
And I'm pleased you're here too, because we met recently and I've been on a bit of a mission since I started looking into female founders, why they were getting less funding, and realized that women are still being seen as a minority, even though we're not, because we're not as visible. We're not in the press as often. Our successes aren't as visible. We're not talking about these as much. And then during the conversation, you were talking about your whole evolution and how you're working with women in the C-suite, women going through a tricky divorce, all of this kind of difficult part, and how you help women reclaim their power. And I was like, oh, we have to talk about this on the show. So thank you for saying yes. But before we dive into that, I would love it if you could bring the audience up to speed on what has that journey been like, because you started in sales distribution went into life coaching, came back to supporting C-suite women. It's been quite an evolution, and I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about that journey.
Well, Melitta, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm very excited to talk into this topic because anything we can do that help women promote themselves, come forward and speak up and reclaim their power is what it's all about. And as I look at my pathway, it's been anything but a straight line. And I actually started out at university doing a phys ed degree, specializing in coaching, and then went to work at a mental institute, which was probably one of the more prominent pathways of getting here. It really taught me how to meet people where they are. And from there, like ended up going into direct sales at Xerox because, that's what one does from a mental institute into business. And there was a much greater fit there than anyone would probably understand. And inside of that, kept moving along, ended up in what was called the cell phone company, which was Cantel at the time. And I was the sales trainer for Western Canada and then became director of operations. And that was intriguing. That was in charge of a staff of 70. I had all male branch managers reporting to me. I was the only female director in Canada in that position and had a great run. Loved that work. And surprisingly, that kept taking me back to my sports coaching. How do we bring everybody forward? How do we get really clear objectives? How do we have some fun doing this? And then from there, it came a time where there were it was right sizing, shifting, and I had one of those backroom conversations. Would you like to be promoted or would you like to be punted? And I found myself feeling like I was selling myself corporately and it just no longer fit.
Mhm.
And I found myself putting my hand up saying, I'm going to choose to be packaged. And I was in my late 30s and it was not what people were doing. And I got a really healthy handshake. They were incredibly kind to me. And from there, I thought, well, I'm going to do something else really extraordinary. And I went off and did energy work, got trained in Reiki. And I started a energy practice where I was doing hands-on healing. And I had a business coaching practice. And over time, it morphed where I went, oh, the energy clients want this, the business clients want this. And ultimately, it became intermingled. And now it's what I do. There's no separation to either one. And over time, I've worked with clients in understanding how do they actually come home to themselves, own it, be settled, and present to the world. And I'm finding more than ever, it's really needed. There is so much coming at us, and it's very easy to get distracted. So I'm delighted because ultimately it brings me back to what my degree was in, which was about coaching and bringing the best forward of every person on the team. So it's been kind of fun watching it go full circle, but it's certainly not a straight line and not like any of my contemporaries. So I've rather enjoyed that. Now that I trust it, it took a long time in between to believe I was not losing my mind. Yeah.
I see this cycle quite often with, particularly with people who are business strategists, business coaches, and then they see that the route to success, and I've seen this as well. I haven't gone down the energy route, but the route to success is self-care, self-love, self-respect, and finding out what the self needs to be successful and going from that place into building whatever you want from there. That's what becomes, I don't want to say unstoppable because I think we should stop, but unlimited. You can do whatever feels aligned and purposeful and meaningful for you. And even if it doesn't look like what everyone else is doing, or it looks a bit squiggly, but following that path. And so I love that you've taken these different disparate parts and actually seen actually that they're all coming from the same space and helping people get to that same result. But I want to come back to something you said there about being the only female director. You had a team of 70 men, and what was that like? How do you handle being the only woman in a room? Because I think this is where a lot of women don't speak up. And I know from my research when I was running women's networks, it helps when there's a group of three women. If there's just two, you tend to support each other and agree, but three, then it feels like more of a conversation. But how did you handle that being the only one?
That's a great question. It was an extraordinary time, Alita. It really was. Within the company was a lot of empire building, a lot of divisiveness. So it was like a constant watch your back. And for me, I was fortunate. I grew up with an older brother. I did a lot of sports. I really learned to trust myself in that respect. And basically, it was the 90s. And what I found was it was actually a little easier because it was more straightforward. There was no pretending. There was no proper etiquette. The language was not sanitized. You know, Guys would say exactly what they felt like and meant. And it may have hurt. I needed to have thicker skin, but there was no surprise. And I was abundantly clear in that situation. And what I did learn was nothing beats performance. Nothing beats performance. If my team is tuned in, turned on, and we're performing, that's going to open doors. Now, it wasn't going to open doors where they went, oh, wow, look at what Ruth's team's doing out in British Columbia. They kind of went, oh, okay. I mean, I did have a situation with the fellow that hired me. He got demoted a few months in, and the fellow that took over for him came out. And he didn't like the way I was leading. He didn't like one of my branch managers. And he actually came out and he said to me, that guy over there, you need to fire him. And like I was 33. This guy was in his 50s. It was, and this is who's reporting to me. So I thought, I'm going to do something unconventional. I didn't listen to what was going on around me. There weren't a lot of great business books to support women at that point. And I flew over to where this particular guy was and I sat him down. I said, hey, look, I've been told to fire you. And he, like, his head snapped. And I said, but hang on. If your numbers are so amazing, my hands will be tied. I can't do that. So if you'd like some coaching, you want to get your numbers on the board, I can guide you through that. And he said, I'll do whatever it takes, Ruth. And he absolutely did whatever it took. And in 90 days, he was top store in Canada against plan. So my boss was livid because he wanted that guy gone. He just decided. And so how did I do it? I kept listening to what that little voice I could hear within me. And when I couldn't hear it, I went for a run. And if that didn't work, I paddled competitively, or I'd have a nice coffee, or I'd just figure out that I wasn't going to concede to a system that didn't support people. Because to me, people have always been the difference maker. So, it was wonderful. This guy, and by the way, he was making money hand over fist because he was paid against plan and he was just kicking it. He was kicking it and it was fantastic. So once he started to do that, all the other branch managers on the team went, I'd like to do that. And then we started collaborating and we came forward. We would do group interviews. This is the 90s. No one did that then. We had one guy that was really good at making graphics. He would make ads. We'd share that with the group. Another guy was able to do Excel spreadsheets that helped, but I couldn't do that initially. But initially, when I was able to thread the needle with this one branch manager, that really opened the door. So that was exciting and a bit of a nail biter because I wasn't sure if it was going to work. And I thought, well, I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to do this. And I'm really grateful I did. And so was the branch manager that was in this location. So that was fun.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of a story from my past as well, when I was head of marketing and branding for this marine and shipping consultancy. And so it was full of captains, ex-captains who were used to running their own ship and definitely not taking any orders from a 26-year-old girl, as they saw it. No, not just 26-year-old girl, a 26-year-old girl who didn't type. That was how I was. That was how
Oh
I was
my.
known.
Defiant.
I know,
Yes.
I was quite proud of that title. But like a few of the captains just wouldn't ever listen and wouldn't get on board with anything I was trying to do. They're like, oh no, you have to wait till you have your feet under the table. I was like, what are you paying me for? However, there was one captain who was really open. He's like, I love your ideas. Can we do something together? And then suddenly he got more press coverage. He got more clients. He was starting to be seen as an authority in his space. And then these other guys were like, well, why is he getting all the attention? I was like, because he said yes and he would work with me. You said no. And they're like, oh, well, we didn't know that's what you meant. So it took that one example to show them what I was capable of. And then they all came on board. And it sounds like in a similar way, you did something similar. Is that part of the advice that you now give to women who are in the C-suite and facing these positions where they need to have a bit of authority, but instead of trying to build that authority en masse, just pick one battle that you can use as your sort of testimony in a way?
Absolutely. And it only takes that one moment when we do one, then the odds of doing another. And it's not about showing up and being reactive or reflective of the type of leadership that's going on. It's about showing up with your leadership. I like to refer to it as masculine and feminine. It's not the male female, but we need the masculine principles of the goals, the KPIs, the structure, and we need the feminine, which is, the community, the collaboration, the conscious conflict. And in realizing it doesn't have to look like what you've seen. And there's one particular client I've worked with, and she's a powerhouse, and she is a mathematical genius. She's a VP of finance in this company, and she is a diehard introvert. And she, as we've spoken about her leadership, I said, you don't have to be what's in the room. And I'm going to share it with you because it was so good. I wanted to keep it. She sent me an email as we talked about how she could open her perspectives in a way that didn't cost her. And this is the email she sent me after the board meeting. I realized that I can make things happen through suggestion, leading or opening the conversation to different ideas. It's been interesting seeing the results of the new perspective just over the last couple of days. It's a whole new way of approaching my role in the organization, and it's freeing and kind of exciting. Oh, the possibilities.
I love that. I was having a conversation on the podcast last summer with Jennifer Kahnweiler, who wrote the book, The Introverted Leader. And I was telling her that's what I used to do in meetings was I thought, right, I'm just going to stick with my convictions, my values, and challenge people from that space. But then I got known for that. And over time, we'd have a meeting and then they wouldn't close the meeting until I had given my sort of summary and challenge and had my space. But it took time, but bit by bit, I had that position. But it meant that I didn't have to be loud or pushy or aggressive in any way. But it took understanding myself and kind of step by step giving myself that courage and permission almost to do it my way, which we don't always have.
Yeah.
So in those moments when you decided, I'm going to just hop on a plane, go and see this guy, how did you give yourself permission to do what you were convinced was the right thing to do?
Well, part of it was desperation. There's nothing like necessity to get you to embrace the opportunity. I figured, you know what? This is do or die, Ruth. This is sudden death overtime. I got to get this working, else I'm going to be gone. Like it was that evident. And I thought doing the little bit more, a little bit faster, a little bit harder kind of routine and the strategy just didn't feel like I was going to really move the needle, and the needle needed to move. And I thought, well, if I do something outside of the norm, this is what I'm going to do. And honestly, from a place of integrity, it really cheesed me off that this guy was wanting to assassinate this character because he just didn't like him. And that for me ignited a whole piece in me where it's like, no, not on my watch. You are not taking somebody out because you don't like them. Non-performer, totally with you. And that to me, it's like a mama bear stepping in going, this is not going to happen. And it was a place, and honestly, Melitta, I don't think I thought about it that long. I think I was skating so fast, like what? Okay, I'll do this. And the other extraordinary thing is I was in Vancouver, which is about a 5-hour flight from Toronto. Although I was in the Vancouver office, I didn't report to anybody. So I had no support, but I was in the Vancouver office. And my support was in Toronto, but I wasn't close to the resources. So I was like this island in and of myself. So I just learned to be self-sufficient in a weird way. And it worked. And I realized it worked again and again and again. And it was the cornerstone of how I got my business going. I now like to refer to it as self-leadership. I've got a friend that always teases me about that, but I said, my way of looking at it is self-leadership is if I can lead myself, I can lead the world. I just need to be tuned in, turned on to who I am and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and make sure that I am connected and aligned. And that all sounds very simple, but when we actually are coming up against forces that are trying to push us off, we need to take the time and be abundantly clear about that. And it's not always so easy, but boy, the payoff is huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me of, is it Stephen Covey that talks about the resourcefulness and innovation, R&I? It sounds like you had that in abundance working for you. But I'm curious, if you had gone to that guy and you'd said, look, you're going to get fired, but here's an alternative. If you'd tried that and it failed, what do you think would have happened?
Well, I would have been in a position to have to fail him. Like if he didn't want to join me, I can offer the opportunity, but I can't make you want to change. You want to join me, I'll shine the light, I'll help you. But if you don't want to change, totally your choice. But that's likely going to yield some options that you're not interested in.
Mhm.
And to me, it's about being that direct and it's about being that honest and giving people the opportunity to make appropriate choices. And, we were talking before the podcast started, we are in a time of decision fatigue, but there are decisions you better, belly up to the bar and be involved because it's your life. It's your life. And no one else is going to care about it but you.
Yeah.
Maybe your mom, maybe your partner, but really you need to be there front row center for the choices in your career and your way of living. And there are those moments, there are those defining moments. And often we don't realize it till later. They're usually subtle.
Mm.
Like it's not that big moment where the spotlights are on. It's that subtle moment where you chose this or that. And then you go, wow, wow, that was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And those subtle confirmations, and then you build on those. And that's where the big breakthroughs come from. I say it's not one big moment, but those little insights or little moments where you dared and things worked out and you just built on that, or you changed and went in the right way. Um, yeah, I was just thinking that I see people hold back from doing things because they're worried, well, what if I fail? And it just struck me in that situation that you couldn't really fail. And if you did fail, it wouldn't have mattered. You wouldn't have lost anything apart from a flight and that time. The guy you were trying to help would have lost out, but that didn't really impact anything for you. And we had Michelle Murphy on the show probably 2 years ago now, but she asked one question that I loved and it stayed with me. Is like, what would you do if you were bold? And I think that's just such a nice alternative to, oh, but what if I fail? But what if you were bold?
What if I fail? What if it works out? We only think of the what if not. And what about what if yes? And, like there's that whole piece. You got to take the shot. Like I love the sports analogies, but you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If you
Yes.
don't shoot, you don't stand a chance. And yeah, living in that what if stage is exhausting.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
never,
And you, if you are resourceful and innovative and you are driven and it's meaningful, why would it fail?
well, precisely. And I had another situation where I was at the same company and I was the only female director. And there was huge issues with how commissions were paid. And my guys were out about 35% on their commissions. And I spoke up in the meeting, all men in Toronto, we had a once a month meeting. And the fellow running this meeting is like, anyone else having this trouble? None of the guys spoke up. I said, well, my guys are out and I think it's 35%. That's just your guys have overestimated. Like I just got attacked, super condescending, really dismissive. You don't actually know what you're doing, Ruth. You're new to the role. You haven't got the math right. I said, but I think my stuff is wrong. And no one supported me. And then it got reviewed, took about 6 months. Lo and behold, out 35%. Not one of the guys at the table acknowledged, not that I needed their acknowledgement, not one of them spoke up. And in the end, all of their divisions, their regions got reviewed and all of their guys got bumped up in commissions. And I'm like, wow. And none of you had the courage to speak up. I did. And it was sort of that I thought, well, once again, what have I got to lose? We're out the money now. They're not going to take more money away, but let's get this corrected.
Mm.
And, I remember being at the Christmas party and one of the wives of one of the branch managers just assassinated me, like, you guys and you, because I was the company. And I said, I hear you. I totally appreciate that. We're doing what we can. I can't say, listen, I'm not in charge of. And when it turned around, she was like, wow, I really appreciate it, Ruth. I realized you went to bat for all of the guys. And it's like, yeah. But in that time, it's, you think, oh, how do you do this? But I just couldn't live with myself not speaking up. And if, probably would have come sooner if I hadn't done that.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So when you are working with women now who are like in C-suite or approaching C-suite, what do you see as the most common barriers to them not speaking up, or where you need to help them the most in that respect?
The biggest piece that I see is they're trying to be someone or something that they're not.
Mhm.
They see these other versions of leadership and it's like, but that's not you. Like this woman that I've spoken of, like you're not an outspoken, you're not a, hey guys, let's do this. Very subtle, super powerful, well thought out, well received. That's the biggest thing I see is that they're trying to be somebody they're not. And so then they end up performing rather than leading. And it's like, oh, once they do that, then they start, they wait to feel ready. Well, you're never going to feel ready. You're never going to feel ready. And it becomes a really complicated, how do I actually get out there? And the piece of them coming out where they want to be their natural, essential self, the authentic self, but then they're confusing visibility with the level of vulnerability, and it just gets jumbled. We need to keep it super simple, super simple. Be yourself, speak out, and know that your way of leading isn't going to be the performance that you've seen. And I often say to people, especially the women I work with, go back to some of the worst boss you've had. Those are the people that have taught you the most powerful lessons. And what is it you know? And what is it you want to offer your people? And usually, like when I was leading, what I looked at is what is it that I needed when I was in corporate and direct sales? What did I need that I never got? What would be the ultimate gift I could give someone? And when I say that to people, the other piece I also do with women is I go, look, many of the women I work with have kids. I go, you've all had a 5-year-old. I treat everybody as if they're 5, not in a condescending way, but they're fully formed. They haven't gone to school yet, so they haven't learned all the mass behaviors. Deal with them directly. You ask up front, you're clear, you're direct. And did your 5-year-old son say, oh, mommy, yes, I will do that immediately? No, he usually pushed back and you had to be clear again. I said, find that strength. I know you can do it. You did it as a mom. You can do it now. Don't let yourself be bombarded here. And it's hilarious because once we shifted into that perception, oh, then there's a presence, then there's a power, then there's a peacefulness to it. You go, oh, I can do this. Oh, I am doing this. And it's all that's needed. And it's needed all the time. It's not one and done. It's needed all the time. You have to come back and you go, oh, right, I got to speak into that. Oh, right, I need to speak into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say that anyone who can get a toddler to do anything is already a master negotiator. You
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And you need to have bulletproof boundaries with those kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Rarely do you win, is my observation.
But you get there in the end.
Precisely. Yeah.
And it embeds, it stays when you get there. So you talk about coming home to your power. Is that the process you take people through? Tell me more about what that means.
What that means is for them to understand when they're connected to that level within them where they believe and they trust and they can operate from there, they can feel it in their body. And when there's that tipping point that they're pushing or proving, and there's a subtle difference, like sometimes you feel it when your toes are curling, sometimes you feel it where your tummy gets a bit tight, or your teeth clench a little bit, or you push your shoulder into, and then you start doubting what you're doing. It's like, hang on, now you're into proving. Let's get away from proving and performing. Who are you in this moment? Like this particular VP, who are you in that moment? What is it you really want to offer? Well, I want to offer a moment to have them exhale and consider this. I said, well, then let's do that. You don't need to be there flying ideas at people. That's not who you are. It's not how you operate. So the process of coming home is really listening in. And when they describe to me where their frustrations are, we'll talk into moments of, well, I faced this and then this went on. It's like, so tell me where you feel in your body right now. What's going on in your system right now? And they go, oh, and I go, right, now you're pushing. Now I can't hear you because now you're angry. And now anger's driving the bus. Oh, and now fear's driving the bus. Who's driving the bus? We want you driving the bus. We want both hands on the wheel, and we want you to do it on purpose. Not so easy. I mean, that aspect of being intentional sounds so simple. And yet, they come in, they say they criticize this, or they, nudge you and bang. It's like, don't take the bait. Neutral is your greatest ally. Yeah, but Ruth, he does and they do. And it's like, Neutral is your greatest ally. You need to understand what neutral feels like. Often I'll say to clients, just put your hand on your chest. No one looks and goes, why has that person got their hand on their chest? Bring your hand home, take a breath, be home, feel your system, right, reset like that. Every time we blink, it's an opportunity to reset. We don't have to go off into the woods for hours on end. Blink, I'm back. Blink. It's like those old Etch-a-Sketch, I get the opportunity to start again. We can do it if we do it on purpose. And it is a skill, but as we know, skills need to be practiced. And we start off with skills, we're unconsciously incompetent, then we become consciously incompetent, then we're consciously competent. And if all goes well, we get to the second nature of it where it becomes unconsciously competent. It's simply a skill of learning to come home. Come home to yourself, trust your power, come home to yourself, and knowing when you're not home. And it's a very subtle perception, and yet one of the most profound that we can have in our arsenal. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's something I've really learned from this podcast, because it's something we hear more and more, well, more than anything else, is that trust your intuition, and you'll know when you're in alignment with that, when you feel calm within yourself. The energy is there. You're leaning into something rather than, as you say, pushing against something. But it takes time, because that language is so subtle that it's easy to miss. But it's our superpower as women. But as you say, particularly in a male environment, it's that natural way that we are of being isn't there. So it can feel like the wrong thing to do. But there's a great book that I read years ago now. It's called Why the Best Man for the Job is a Woman. And it makes the point. It makes the point that so many of our natural skills are what's needed in business today, and it's needed in leadership. And studies now show that women excel at leadership, but men are paying a fortune to learn those skills that we have naturally. But because the environment has been built by men over a period of time, it doesn't always feel like it's welcome or needed, or that we have to adapt to them. But actually, we will do them more service if we help them adapt to us, because that's what they need to do. So yeah, I love that idea of coming home to yourself and feeling that, and knowing you're not just going to get there in the next meeting. It's going to be something that I have to practice.
And it's about us appreciating our own wisdom, and we don't get wisdom without experience. And that's the aspect of why we need to listen. Like, you can be an expert, you can read all you want from books, but you need to have the front row experience of being in the moment to experience it. And we can talk all we want about what we should offer, we should do. And it's like, the more we can trust it, the more we can be with it, the easier it is to share. And when we're simply sharing it, here's what I have to offer, take it or leave it. Not, you should listen to what I have to say, I've got some great wisdom. It's like, share it, take it or leave it. I go back to this VP of finance where she's learned to just drop these gems in, and they're starting to go, oh, what did you say? What did you say? Because she's not proving, she knows her stuff, and she shares from there. And we do need to share from there.
Yeah, it's so much more powerful, and comes across much more natural as well.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of listeners, myself as well, so I'm asking for me, going through midlife, and you just have so much change, and you have all of these internal changes going on and challenges. Plus, you've got kids who are teenagers, you've got elderly parents that need help. Everything is pulling you in all directions. How do we stay true to ourselves in that situation when you feel like you have to be a dozen different people for different reasons at different times of the day? And how do you manage your energy and stay centered and intentional in those moments?
Well, that's a superb question, Melitta, because it is very powerful, the stuff that women transition through. And I mean, the aspect of menopause and the various life changes. A client was doing a talk a couple of weeks ago, and I was presenting the evening and introducing the speakers. And there was a 23-year-old in the room going, why do we have to go through menopause anyways? It was a very powerful question. And there were three experts on the panel. One was a pharmacist, one was a kinesiologist, and one was a naturopath. And, they had some answers. And then I shared with, well, It's when our resources change. And it's when we actually get to tap into wisdom. But we need to make adaptations in relation to where we are. And that's the biggest thing I see is not, oh my God, I got to do more. Oh, I need to push harder, faster. I'm so tired. It's like, hang on, what am I asking of myself? And it's about doing that review. Where am I? What am I asking of myself? Is that still the appropriate strategy for me? Do I need to adjust? I don't know about you, but I do weights at the gym. I do weights differently now than I did in my 20s, but I'm still doing the weights. I make sure that I'm refining it. And that's our biggest thing is where am I? Is it just a tired day? Or is my system shifted that much that I need to refine it differently? And we have a multitude of specialists around now that are speaking up and supporting us in this way. Because as you said at the beginning, a lot of the research isn't done for women. There's way more research now on how we can support. And make sure you source them out, whether it's a trainer, whether it's a nutritionist, whether it's the type of coach you work with. It's super important. And women are not just small men. They're a totally different being, and they need to operate accordingly.
Yeah. And something you said in our previous discussion before today, and it was, when you were talking about coming home to power, you were saying it's not something to learn, it's something to remember.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I really love that.
Yeah, we keep thinking that everybody else has got the Holy Grail. Oh, Melitta knows more about this, so I'm going to lean into Melitta, or I'm going to read this book, and it's like, hang on. I need to remember that I know a lot. And am I using what I know to bring it forward? I mean, one of the greatest studies I've read years ago, I won't go into the fullness, but they talked about the granny study and that whole aspect of supporting kids where they would just go, oh, wow, how did you do that? Oh, wow. Like didn't know any of the material that these kids were doing on a computer, but that remembering when we can see people, that's the ultimate gift. And we need to remember to see ourselves. If I can't see me, I can't share me with any of you. And it's that process of remembering, that process of coming home to ourselves. And I'd like to say, hey, I live here all the time, no problemo. But stuff pulls me off topic. I need to come home. And how do I come home? Depends on the magnitude of what's going on. I might, between calls, hop on one foot, go wash my hands, let any of the negative stuff go down the drain, let Mother Nature compost it into something else, or grab my dog and go into the woods and just walk and be free in my mind, or get into the salt water and do a saltwater immersion to help my whole system kind of be in these places, or, meet a friend for a glass of wine after work. There's a whole variety of ways. There's not a you must, you must. It's like, what do I need? What would be an intervention now? And I know with some clients that have outrageous days and they might be working from home. If it's that kind of day, take 5 minutes, have a shower, not a hygiene shower, just a rinse with every drop that hits you. Let it take any of the strain and frustration down the drain. Put on some fresh clothes, come into the day again. And that's that point of remembering. And there's many, many ways to do it. And we do it already more than we realize. And in understanding, the more I'm home, the more I can connect with you. And I can actually hear you and I can actually be with you. And I can see you, because that's the ultimate gift I can give you, is to see you and hear you for what you have to offer. And that to me is the greatest gift. And I love getting it too. It's like when I offer it to you, it's amazing how I don't give it to you so that you're going to then see and hear me. But when I do that, there's a presencing that happens. And we find this level of connection. And to me, the connection is the magic. Like I'm not interested in the superficial. I'd rather just go for a walk on the woods on my own with my dog if I'm not going to have a connection with someone. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Totally agree. So, Ruth, I love everything that you've shared. And I think it's quite deep, but at the same time, it's really simple just to take that time to remember yourself, see yourself, and practice being yourself with intention in every situation, whatever that situation needs, what other people around you need as well. And I think, being seen, as you say, is the greatest gift we can give to anyone else, but also the greatest gift we can give to ourselves. And I think we forget that too often, particularly, as I said, at midlife, where you can feel obliged to give to so many people. Take like seeing yourself first and giving yourself what you need can feel a bit indulgent, but I think it's needed. I say in my book, we call it kindful to yourself. And that's really the space where you can have the most impact. So I love that you've taken us through your way of coming home to yourself. I think that's just such a powerful message to remember. Is there anything that you feel we haven't touched on that the audience needs to know if they're going to come home to themselves and speak up with more power and do themselves proud more often?
Realize that to do that, it does take effort. It takes intentional effort. It's not a natural, oh, I'm just going to remember and come home to myself. I hate to say it, but women are notorious for putting themselves last on the list. And this is going to force you to challenge how you do what you do. And I often say to clients, especially through menopause or through, and I say menopause to men and to women, because if men are living with a partner, they need to understand, or would be helpful to their relationship if they find a way to understand, and women speaking up. It's that place of them understanding my resources have shifted, and I need to be very intentional on how I do this. And if I underestimate that, I'm going to make my life really challenging. And that's the part that I see is so pivotal. The more we can understand, like I say to clients, even not menopause, younger women, it's like, so you have a cold. You only have 5 out of 10 for energy today. Now you need to be really on purpose. The more we can be on purpose, it's not about having the greater impact, but the simpler we can be in the execution of how we want to do our day and how we want to live our job. It's when we get disoriented going, I should be able to do this and that and that and this. Oh, I'm so excited. And then nothing happens. And it's like, just a minute. Insights are really powerful, but if we don't take action, nothing changes.
Yeah.
And to me, we need to do something. I don't care if it's moving the needle 1 millimeter. I don't care if it's just one step. We do need to do something. If we start to retreat, then we start to doubt, then we start to isolate ourselves. And when we do that, it's like pulling the car over to the curb. It's really hard to re-enter the traffic. If I'm in traffic, I can negotiate lane changes with a little bit of effort. But if I'm at the curb, I got to wait till there's an opening. I have to accelerate. I have to get in. Like, it's just a very different place. So we need to be our greatest support. We need to be our greatest ally. And that can be really challenging at times when we're so used to putting ourselves last on the list. And it is a shift. And society will tell us we're being, that's a luxurious thought, or, you're being self-serving. It's like, it's what it needs to be to happen. And if we don't, then we pay the price. And more women talk about take themselves well beyond reserve, and then they crash. And then they can barely even get to the curb, let alone back into traffic. And to me, it's heartbreaking because we need to be our own best advocates. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned there that sometimes, we can feel we should be able to do all of these things. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to ask for help when I can't cope with everything or I don't know how to do something. And before I felt like, oh, I should be able to do all of this stuff. And then it got to a point where, I'm living abroad, I've got 2 kids, I'm running a business, like moving house, doing all of these things. Like, well, I can't. Maybe I should, but I can't do this. And I started asking for help.
Yeah.
And people love to help. And it becomes very addictive when you realize you can actually get help with this stuff.
And the hilarious part is, Melitta, I'm sure if I asked you, you have been happy to help everybody else. You've been busy helping everyone else. Oh, me? No, no, I don't need any help. It's okay. And it's healthy. I mean, there's a lot of power in giving. There's a vulnerability in receiving, and we need both. We need to let people help us.
Yeah.
I can totally relate. It wasn't an easy part of my upbringing. And now I go, yeah, people want the opportunity to help us.
Yeah. Yeah. We had Bob Berg on the podcast a while ago, and he's got those 5 laws of being a go-giver. And the hardest one is the last one of the law of receptivity, like being open to receive as well. And I think as women, we find that especially hard. So it's a really important lesson. But how did he describe it? Like breathing, if you breathe in, you also have to breathe out, So it's give and take. You need the both, which I really like that way of seeing it. So yeah, I think it comes back to, as you said, doing what we need to do, and that's okay. And in those moments where maybe someone else is saying, "Oh, she shouldn't be doing that," to quote Mel Robbins, like, let them. Let them think whatever they want. It doesn't concern us. If we are getting what we need so that we can be our best selves and help others, happy days, I'd say.
Precisely.
Ruth, thank you so much for joining us today. If people have resonated with this conversation and they would love to continue to get to know you a little bit more and continue the conversation, where's the best place for them to find you?
Come find me on LinkedIn. I think you're going to include the LinkedIn link in the notes. I met Melitta by a conversation that someone else had a conversation. It's all about connection. And as you say, if it's resonated, if you want to further the conversation, I'd love to chat. And it never ceases to amaze me, the brilliance of connections. And then you find how small the world is. You're in Switzerland, I'm in Canada. I've just introduced you to someone in Australia and you go, oh, right. Because the key inside of this, I mean, I love men and women, but right now I'm on a bit of a soapbox that we need more women in leadership. We need strong women supporting other women. We need women leading as women. So any way we can further that conversation, if it's like, oh, hey, Ruth, I got a question for you. Can you suggest, or do you know someone? Absolutely reach out, because it's what's possible right now. And I'm more passionate than ever in the nature of the way I work. And what I also realize is I'm now at that, stage in my wisdom that frankly, I just say it like it is. Take it or leave it. You like it? Great. Don't. Let's move along. Let's not waste a lot of time. So if I can be assistance that way, great. And I'll leave you with one thought as we talk about into this leadership. When we look and you're leading and you're working with your people and you ask them, how are they? Make sure you're asking them from a place that you care. Look them in the eye and say, how are you doing? And if you don't, then don't ask the question. Don't be nice. Somebody else gets hurt when it's nice. Be direct, be clear, open the door, and know that people want to be seen and heard. And the more genuine you can be, that more you can be in your natural essence, then it opens up. And if it's not a fit, then move along. Let's not waste a lot of time. There's enough strain in the world as it is. So,
yeah. And I was listening to Simon Sinek a while ago, and he was talking how when people need us, and there was another book about how to be brilliant, and they said something very similar. When people need us, or we ask, like, how are you really? Sometimes we're fearful that we're going to get caught up into something too big, or we won't have time for this. But all they need is 5 to 8 minutes of our time and attention, and that's it. And so it's not going to be a big drain on us, but as we said earlier, a big gift. But it doesn't need to be anything in depth. But seeing that person, as you say, it is really key. I love that question. A great note to end on. Ruth, thank you so much.
Totally my pleasure. And I look forward to seeing more of your material out there, Melitta. It's always getting my attention. And I know for you, you're going to have a spectacular evening. I'm about to have a spectacular day and really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I love that I know that it won't be the end of this conversation.
Well, hopefully I'll see you in September. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you for joining us today. And what a wonderful conversation. One of the ideas that stayed with me most was Ruth's reminder that coming into your power isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already are. And I think that's such an important message for business owners too. So much marketing advice encourages us to copy someone else's formula, steal my 5 steps or something along those lines. But the businesses that create lasting trust and success are rarely built that way. They're built by people who understand their own value, communicate that clearly, and lead with confidence in who they are. And that's exactly what value whispering is all about. And if you'd like some help discovering the marketing approach that's right for your business, I'd love to invite you into my world. Whether that's joining my free birthday masterclass tomorrow, downloading one of my free resources, including my book, Value Whispering, listening to more episodes of this podcast, and there's more than 300 for you to choose from, or booking your complimentary Get Acquainted call with me, you'll find everything you need linked in the show notes at melittacampbell.com/podcast. Meantime, if this conversation has resonated with you, I'd love to hear what your biggest takeaways have been. Share it on LinkedIn and tag myself and Ruth in that so we can continue this conversation and support you. And if you know someone who's navigating leadership, visibility, or simply needs that reminder that they don't have to become someone else to succeed, then do share this episode with them too. It might be just what they need to hear today. As always, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, remember, the deeper your message resonates, the more naturally you stand out to your dream clients and the less you have to sell. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Bye.